Hey, what is up YouTube? Kolst here. So we are here now with the Fracture and Alterac Valley card review number 3. I believe there have been 22 cards announced. There have actually been some more announced last night that aren't on the website yet, but I'm just going to do the ones that are on the website right now. And we're going to go over that. Before I do though, just wanted to bring this up really quickly just because Blizzard did announce that they're changing the way that they're doing some of these final card reviews. A lot of times they would just, dump the rest of the cards, like the 70 or so that are left right at the end. But they've said here that, it's not in this exact tweet, but they're actually starting to spread these out to other, Hearthstone community members. And this was the pseudo reveal for a particular arena related one because Dreads and Redbeard are two arena creators. I think they're the other two most active YouTubers, but also they're way bigger than me on Twitch. I believe they're doing a co-op reveal stream tomorrow evening, USA time, as of recording this video. So, and of course, this is a tweet from Alkali Lakey, who's one of the new community managers for Hearthstone. Of course, shout out to Zeddy as well, mentioning that there's, Judge, me, Save File, other arena streamers. And if you guys are, this would be a great place where if you guys want to bring up, hey, any arena YouTubers or streamers you happen to want that you think it would be cool if they got one of these things, you could, bring it up. Just saying, But with that, let's just go right on to the review. So as normal, there were 22 cards that have been revealed, I believe. I'll talk about all of them, even though, cards like, especially the hero cards, probably aren't going to be in arena, or at least it'll be extremely rare to discover them, but I'm just going to talk about all the ones, and hopefully I get them all right, the ones that I haven't already reviewed. So the first one here is Rokara the Valorous, which is a hero card, so again, probably will not be draftable in arena. But it's a 7 mana, you get a 5/2 unstoppable force after you attack a minion, smash it into the enemy hero. Actually haven't 100% verified, but I'm pretty sure that just means that, the enemy hero will take its attack damage as damage, right? So, and the hero power is 2 mana, deal 2 damage if you get an honorable kill, which means if you do exactly 2 damage and kill something, you gain 4 armor at the same time. So overall, honestly, I'd have to say that compared to a lot of the other hero cards I've been seeing, this thing seems relatively fair. So it's definitely fine. Like, you would like to have it if you could somehow generate an arena, but the other hero cards have just been doing a lot more overpowered stuff, frankly. But this is, totally fine. I don't think any of the hero cards are going to be bad, per se. So that one's, of course, still strong. Just there are better ones. Next, move on to a card which will be draftable in arena, but it is a legendary. This is Captain Valganar. Again, if I didn't mention, we're in Warrior this whole time. So 6 mana, 6/6 battle cry. If you have gained 15 or more armor this game, gain +3/+3 and charge. So this is more of a constructed type thing, really. Gaining 15 armor, that's possible, but it's going to be very hard in arena to actually do that unless you really draft like specific things, which you generally don't prioritize very highly. So I mean, at worst case is a 6 mana 6/6. It is possible to get a 9/9 charge out of this, but really, I don't know, this isn't really too much of an arena card, so you're probably not going to be seeing it that much. Maybe if you generate it and you think you happen to be very close to that, but it's not going to happen very often, I think. Moving on to a card that would make it very easy if you just happen to have it, would be Frozen Buckler. This is an epic spell, so you won't see it for that reason, but also you won't see it because it's not very good. So this is, at least in arena, is concerned. So it's gain 10 armor at the start of your turn, lose 5 armor. So you do get very close to having these kind of armor effects, right? This is really just 2 mana, gain, even if you do get 10 armor. The idea with a card like this is that you want to play it when you're staring a bunch of damage from the board in the face, so that, you're going to get the 10 armor because they're going to want to hit you in any way. But I don't know. Generally speaking, in arena, if you're that far behind, you're just going to die the next turn if they don't just kill you through the 10 armor anyway, right? So not a card you're going to be seeing too often. Something that maybe becomes relevant off of being generated randomly. Maybe you do just discover it when you are dying, but not a card you're going to want to draft pretty much ever. So moving on now, let's skip past the neutrals. Let's just go through all the class cards first. First one I didn't talk about, I believe, here is Dread Prison Glaive. 1 mana, 1/3 weapon, honorable kill, deal damage equal to your hero's attack to the enemy hero. So obviously in constructed you could have a lot more attack synergy potentially that you might be able to pull off with. I think probably, you're not gonna do that too often. But overall, this is a 1-mana 1/3 weapon in Demon Hunter, which there already is a 1/2 weapon which draws a card, which is pretty good, you know, draws the Death Rattle. But this, I mean, you're dealing damage to the enemy hero, which is not worthless, but probably not exactly what you're going to want to be doing, because you're going to want to pick this as an early game card, and then you just don't really care too much about that, right? You're probably going to almost always trigger this honorable kill, because when you hit something with a 1 or a, obviously this is in Demon Hunter, so you can deal 2 damage with it too. You're going to be able to do 1 or 2 damage, and generally when you're hitting something, unless you're popping a Divine Shield, you're going to be triggering honorable kill. That's just, you know, how it works. So you're going to get some free damage out of this. So, I mean, overall, in a tempo aggressive deck, definitely does a lot of things that you want it to, so it's pretty good. But, you know, if you're drafting more control style, this thing really isn't going to be what you're looking for. You're going to want other things. So overall, I'd say this card, it really depends on what you actually want, what kind of direction you're trying to go with your deck. Not an auto pick, but definitely not a never pick, somewhere in the middle. Moving on to the next one, we have the Urzul Giant. This is a 13 mana minion. It's an 8/8, which costs 1 less for each friendly minion that died this game. We're in Demon Hunter, if I didn't mention that. I think I did, but... So, it's an epic, you won't see it too often. So, but overall, you think about this, like, you can imagine, like, this only triggers off of friendly minions. You're probably, hopefully playing, you know, on average, like maybe 1 minion a turn. If you're playing 1 minion per turn, then this is going to become playable right around like turn 7, like a 7 mana 8/8. We're a little past the point where a 7 mana 8/8 is really considered good. Obviously, the idea in Demon Hunter is you would have things like, you know, Coordinated Strike, for example, so you could actually, you know, get this to get a lot cheaper, a lot faster, maybe play it on like turn 5, turn 6. It's costed low enough, and it'll lower in cost fast enough that it'll always be playable, so this definitely isn't going to be terrible, but obviously you're going to value it a lot higher if you do happen to have, you know, some of these Illidari type effects, or even Death Rattles as well, Death Rattles that summon other minions, you know, so it'll just help you get those a lot faster. Reborns as well if they're in rotation. And so I think overall, you know, there's a lot of things in Demon Hunter that do that, and even in the neutral set lately, you know, sticky Death Rattle minions, so I think this will be pretty good for the most part. So I think you'll be seeing it a fair amount, just the fact that it's an epic kind of limiting it. If you can discover a demon somehow, you might be seeing it from that a lot as well. You know, coming from things like Netherwalker. And with that, let's move on to the last Demon Hunter card announced so far, which is Sigil of Reckoning. This is a 5 mana sigil. Most sigils are very cheap, this one being very different. At the start of your next turn, summon a random demon from your hand. So assuming you're not getting a demon with Rush or Charge, which you could actually, because I believe Inquisitor's a demon demon that you would summon wouldn't be able to attack because it would have Summoning Sickness. But again, this would be insanely good if you happen to have it with Inquisitor. It's an epic, so you won't see it too much, by the way. But, I mean, this is just... Probably on average, you're not going to have the right thing to make this work exactly, but I mean, it's a very... If you're just pulling, you could even pull something as basic as, you know, just this big demon here to just get a 5 mana 8/8 off of a delay. That's pretty good, right? But overall, probably not going to be consistent enough to really say that this is a super high value card, because I don't think we've gotten to there being enough demons that you're going to consistently have one. But, you know, in the right deck, you could definitely cheese out some games with this. Alright, and that's it for Demon Hunter. Moving on to Mage. And so I already talked about Build a Snowman, I believe. So now getting into some of the big Mage cards that they've been printing. They're really trying to force this archetype and construct it, so we'll see if they manage it. But so they have some of these really interesting Mage cards that might not work too well in Arena because you can't, you know, construct your deck. But this one is Belinda Stonehearth. 6 mana 5/5, Battlecry, draw 2 spells. Swap their costs with this minion's stats. I mean, if this was just a 6 mana 5/5, draw 2 spells in Arena, that would be probably pretty good, you know, because drawing a spell is typically better than drawing a card, because spells tend to be, you know, some of the better cards and cards you actually want in your hand in Arena. The problem with this is that if they cost anything less than 5, you're losing stats on this minion. Like if you draw a 1 mana spell, whether it's the attack, whether it's the first or second draw, you're basically negating your entire 6 drop here. and that makes it not really worth it anymore. So this has this weird deck building condition that you have to have a lot of big spells and only big spells. You can't have small spells with this. That makes this extremely inconsistent in Arena. It's a legendary, so you won't be offered it too much, but just for that reason, it's hard to imagine it really working. If you're halfway through your draft and all you have is a Flame Strike or some of these other big spells that we're going to mention a little bit later, you know, it could work out, but it's just not going to work very well typically in the general Arena deck. Generally, if you don't have any small spells, you're going to struggle. And with that, let's move on to another big spell. Quite a big spell here. We have Ice Blood Tower. This is at the 10 mana spell. At the end of your turn, cast another spell from your deck, last 3 turns. I mean, compared to the other one, you could, at least it's not completely ruined by having small spells, but, you know, you obviously, the idea would be that you have this with a bunch of big spells as well, which is, again, something that is a little hard to do in Arena. Now, you do draw and play 3 spells, but also it appears that this casts them randomly, so spells might even target your own stuff. There's just a lot of reasons why this probably isn't very good. A 10 mana spell in Arena is really slow. So you would have to have like perfect synergy for this. Right now, it's just not very likely. A lot of the high cost spells that they are introducing are high rarity, so you're not likely to have them too much. So very possible that maybe if you get some of these early, you can make this kind of deck work, but it's definitely not going to be consistent at all. And that's all the ones that are on this page. I'm going to stick to the ones that are on this page mostly, but I'll just acknowledge because there are a couple epic spells that have been announced. So I'll just point out here, there's, you know, Mage is getting a mass polymorph. They're also getting a 9 mana, basically a new puzzle box. That's another one that they've announced, but I'll save those until they're actually on the website to do my full review of them. But those spells are very good. It's just that they're epic rarity. Whether or not you're actually able to get them in an Arena deck, that's the concern there. All right, moving on to the next class, which is Rogue. Rogue, I believe, this is the first one I haven't talked about, which is Forsaken Lieutenant. This is a 2-mana 2/2 stealth. After you play a Death Rattle minion, become a 2/2 copy of it with Rush. So 2 different ways you can use this card. Obviously, if you just get a 2/2 stealth, that's really not good enough for a card. You really need to get some other upside. But if you play this with, you can either tempo this on 2 still, save it until you have a Death Rattle, play like a 3, 4, maybe 5 mana Death Rattle. And also, because it's Rush, you know, you can, for example, on turn 6, you could play this with a 4 mana Death Rattle on turn 6, and then you get to trigger that Death Rattle immediately. And also get a 2 damage Rush as well. So overall, this is another card. This is an epic, by the way. So you do generally get some Death Rattles in Arena. Not a lot, though. So I think this is going to be, again, one of those things that's a little bit inconsistent. If you can get a good Death Rattle out of it, obviously it's good. And it may be worth it for the upside. It's going to depend, honestly, on just what the rotation is, because some do have a lot more Death Rattles than others. But yeah, overall, as long as you're getting really any positive Death Rattle effect out of this, it's going to be worth it, though. So I think overall it's going to be pretty solid. But again, you know, sometimes you got to be a little careful with these synergy type stuff in Arena. Arena is definitely moving in a direction where you kind of need to go for more synergy, because otherwise you just get rolled over by synergy. It's kind of gotten there, but yeah. Overall, pretty good card, but you're going to have to make sure that you actually have the right things to make it work. Moving on next to the legendary in Rogue, which is Seraphine Fleet Runner. It's a 5 mana 5/5 battle cry. Replace your minions in hand and deck with ones from other classes. They cost 2 less. So generally speaking, class cards, this replaces all minions, including neutral minions, with class cards. If it just replaced your minions with class minions, like generally speaking, class cards are pretty good. Some of them are synergy based, so they might not be good, but overall, a lot of class minions, they're generally pretty good. And the fact that they cost 2 less is going to be enough to negate any of these kind of, you know, conditional misses you're getting. So basically what we have here is like, this is a new version of Lady Prester. Lady Prester, of course, transforms your minions in deck into dragons. This just replaces them into undercosted class minions. Definitely a very positive effect. The downside of this card being that it's a 5 mana 5/5, but I think the upside is going to make itself worth it very quickly, compared to Lady Prester, which, you know, Lady Prester, you just start rolling the dice to try to hit an Alexstrasza or Ysera or something to try to win. This is going to be way more consistent, but also, you know, it's not going to have nearly the game-winning potential, most likely, that Lady Prester will, because it's definitely possible that you can get a class card that would win you the game by itself, but it's a lot less likely than it is, you know, getting like a 1 in 20 for Ysera. And also a 1 in 20 for Alex, and also a 1 in 20 for, you know, Deathwing or something, if that makes sense. So overall, definitely a good card. I've said I'm not the biggest fan of these types of cards, but, you know, compared to Prester, which is a neutral, this thing being a legendary, it's a class legendary in one class. It's kind of more acceptable for that reason, I think. So, and the fact that it's not quite as RNG as Prester, I think I'm pretty cool with this one. It's more interesting as well, I think. I guess what I'll say is it's hard to nail down exactly, because this card probably objectively isn't going to be quite as good as something like, obviously not like a Ysera or a Sneeds, but it'll probably be, you know, a good legendary. Just there are better legendaries by raw power level most likely, but I think a lot of people are going to be picking this a lot because it's fun, you know. You don't get to do this too much, so it's definitely going to be good enough that you're not going to be, you know, paying too much of a price. Unless it's up against Ysera. With that, let's move on to the next card, the last rogue card on this list here, which is the Lobotomizer. 2 mana 2/2 weapon, honorable kill, get a copy of the top card of your opponent's deck. So if you get the draws off of this, if you're able to trigger that honorable kill, this card is absolutely incredible. The issue is that I feel like it's going to be kind of difficult to actually do that. Obviously, this is a 2 mana weapon in Rogue, which is already a little weird because, you know, then you can't actually use your hero power, and that's a big part of playing Rogue in Arena typically. Because that would be your primary way of knocking things into honorable kill range even. So I feel like the limiting part of this card is going to be just how difficult it actually is to get that honorable kill. Generally speaking, if your opponent plays like a 3/2 on turn 2 and then you have this, you're already doing amazing. So that might make that might be a common enough situation for this card to be really good already. But I guess outside of that situation, you just wouldn't expect to be able to do this so super reliably. So you wouldn't really want to consider this like a consistent turn 2 play, because really, if you don't get this triggered on turn 2, you probably just wouldn't want to play this. You'd want to do something else. So as long as you have, you know, other options and the ability to do that, I think it would be very useful. You want to be viewing this more as card draw thing rather than a tempo card. So overall, because of that, I think it's a little too conditional to be a super giga premium card, but I think it's going to be, you know, if you're able to draft around it and have it fulfill its role, I think it's going to play a very good part of those decks. So I think that puts it in like the pretty good category, not the super crazy category. It's worth mentioning that it says you get a copy of the top card of your opponent's deck. That's really nice as well, because, you know, they're always going to draw that card immediately, so you actually get information. It's actually better than a typical draw, so it is very good. It's just that the card is rather dependent on getting that honorable kill. I guess it's worth saying as well that a 2 mana 2/2 weapon isn't that bad by itself, so it's okay. So overall, that probably upgrades it to, you know, the maybe closer to very good, you know, 4 out of 5, basically, that kind of thing. I don't tend to star rate everything, but that's the kind of idea I'm getting at here. But with that, let's move on to Priest. So Priest, I believe, didn't have any of these announced yet, so we're going to start from the bottom. We have Shadow Word Devour. This is a 1 mana epic spell. There have been so many epics announced, actually. 1 mana, choose a minion. It steals 1 health from all other minions. You could use this on an enemy, I guess, if you were going to then steal the stats off of it with some other card. So that could come into play, but generally speaking, obviously, this is a 1 mana spell. You're going to be able to play this, play some other minion, and then have your minion steal a whole bunch of stats from all other minions, right? So it's two-sided, which could be good, could be bad, you know, because you can redistribute stats on multiple minions that you have as well. This is a 1 mana AoE, effectively dealing 1 damage. It does require you to actually have a minion, which could be awkward in the early game, because, like, you know, on turn 2, sometimes you might just want to play Arcane Explosion, but then you can't actually do it because you don't have a minion here, and you're going to have to, like, buff one of your enemy minions to be able to do it. But generally speaking, it's not going to be too big of an issue. In Arena, I think this is a very good effect. It does things that you really like to do. And sometimes having that really cheap AoE is something that or just cheap pings in general is something that Priest struggles with, so I think this is a very, very strong card. Priest is going to really like this because one of the things you can typically abuse Priest for is not having super cheap abilities to ping. And of course, this is an epic, so you're not going to see it too often, so you're still probably going to play into this, and that just means that when you do have this, you're going to be able to annihilate people with it. So I think a very strong card here. There's also a shadow spell for those shadow synergies. Moving on to the next card here, we have Undying Disciple, which is essentially a super giga power crept version of Tunnel Blaster. So it's the exact same stat line as Tunnel Blaster for 1 mana less, and basically the same effect as Tunnel Blaster, which is deal 3 damage AoE, but with the addition that if you do buff this thing's attack somehow, imagine you were just able to, you know, play an attack health swap on it, you can make it will do whatever the damage of its attack is. So you can buff it, you can use any typical buff as well. Or, you know, again, if you just swap its health, and you could even like swap it and smite it off hypothetically, and then it's just a 7 mana instant AoE hypothetically if you were to do that. So overall, I mean, this is just an extremely... The problem with Tunnel Blaster was that it was just a little too expensive and really awkward. Tunnel Blaster also hits allies, where this only hits enemies. So, I mean, it's crazy how much better it is than Tunnel Blaster. But yeah, I mean, you can even... I mean, this is a thing where even in an aggro deck, you can just throw this in because it's a big taunt that gets in the way of your opponent getting to all your other minions. So this is just an extremely, extremely premium taunt minion in Priest. And just in general, there aren't that many super premium taunts. So this is one of the best, at least non-legendary taunts I think they've ever printed. This is very, very good, very premium minion. Just not quite as crazy as some of the other minions. Don't get me wrong. There's other cards that are way stronger in this set, but this is a very, very good card. Moving on to the legendary minion in Priest is Najak Hexen. Point is, this is a 4 mana 1/4, one of the only 4 mana 1/4s they've ever printed. Meat Wagon, we remember you. This is Battlecry, take control of an enemy minion, death rattle, give the minion back. So this is going to be it's somewhat conditional, right? Just stealing a minion for a turn isn't really good enough. Just the fact that you might have to force your opponent to use removal on this, or if they don't have removal, they might just lose, you know, makes it pretty good. It's not quite worth it if it just gets removed super easily, especially gets removed by a rush minion. But there are many, many things that you can do to make this work. For example, you can steal a rush minion, and then that way you can just trade it off immediately, and then you just get a mind control on a rush minion. Imagine you steal like a Shovel Fist or something, right? You can also silence this minion so that the death rattle can't go off. You can also return it to hand with a Brewmaster or something. So the point is, like, this is a very priesty card. It does priest things. If you're able to combo this successfully, you get crazy, crazy value out of it. You can even Brewmaster or transform the minion that you're stealing as well. But honestly, like, if you were to evolve, you would probably want to evolve this minion instead of whatever you're stealing. So, and as I mentioned, like, I mean, you can even, if you just steal, like, you know, your opponent has a giant taunt minion or something, like a Scrap Dread Colossus, and they're playing a class that can't remove things behind taunt, they might just, you know, not be able to do anything. So a fair amount of the time, even with no synergy, this is going to basically act as at least maybe slightly weaker, but often a mind control. And if you have all those synergies, you can, you know, guarantee it. So this definitely seems like a very, very powerful card. Overall, made even better with, you know, some of these kind of synergies, but even without synergy, probably worth taking. Because sometimes as well, you know, you might just, if you're playing a more aggressive deck, you might just want to be able to steal a taunt minion to go right past it, right? And maybe that one hit, that one series of swings to the face might be all you need as well. So essentially using it just as a silence. So it's a very useful card, I think, so it's going to be very strong. But as a legendary, you will not see it super, super often. Next, we have the last card for Priest right now, which is the Hero card, which I believe was announced by Tithe. 8 mana, Battlecry, trigger the death rattle of every friendly minion that died this game. So there's been a lot of discussion on this card in the constructed community. It has us flipping hero power between deal 5 and restore 5 damage. for 5 mana, and that deal damage does go face, very important to note. Again, like, you're probably not going to see this in Arena too much, but obviously really depends on how many death rattles you're going to get. You're going to want to have some kind of death rattles. Just having this hero power isn't going to make it worth passing your turn, but yeah, it's going to be pretty crazy. This is going to be a card you're going to be seeing a lot in Constructed for sure, especially in Wild, I think. Death rattle Reese is good like this, but yeah, probably not something you're going to see in Arena too much. So then moving on to Hunter, I believe we talked about all of these already except for this one, which is Spring the Trap. 4 mana epic spell. Deal 3 damage to a minion and cast a secret from your deck. That is the baseline. And if you're able to honorable kill something with that 3 damage, instead of 1 secret, you cast 2 secret. Basically, this is kind of like a Rinling's Rifle, which, if you're not aware, is like one of the best cards ever printed in Hunter. But you get both casts instantly. Hypothetically, if you're able to honorable kill. It's worth noting that you cannot go face with it, though. The difference is from Rinling's Rifle, you can't go face, and you also need to actually have the secret in your deck. Part of the nice thing about Rinling's Rifle is you can like chain freezing traps, but you can't do that with this because it's always going to pull 2 different secrets if it does pull 2 secrets. But overall, this is, I mean, it's an incredible effect if you can actually trigger it. The downside being for Arena that does mean you actually have to draft secrets, but there was another secret synergy card as well, which would potentially make drafting secrets better than it usually is. And Hunter secrets are not incredible typically, but they're among the best secrets. I don't like to draft secrets in general, but you know, freezing trap and some of the other ones like Snake or some of the more tempo-based secrets are generally pretty good, so you can definitely take them. And if you have something like this, you're going to want to take them. So I think in general, especially if you can get this early in the draft, you'll probably be able to get enough secrets to make it worth it. But it is a little bit risky. Overall, this is one of those, you know, this is a synergy-based card that I think is just going to be worth it because the upside is really high. It's a very strong card if you can pull it off successfully. Because again, even if you just get 1 secret, this is a pretty good card. So that's all to say there. Moving on to Shaman. So Shaman has an interesting hero card here. Again, hero card's not offered in Arena, but this thing, essentially you get to call upon 2 elements. You get to choose between, you can choose in order, like to trigger 2 of these. So there's deal 2 damage AoE, there's deal 6 to the enemy hero, restore 6 to all friendly characters, and summon 2/2/3 taunts. Would be pretty powerful in the turn you play it, and then you get to call upon an element every turn as well. So again, not going to be in Arena too much, but a very interesting card, honestly. I do like the design of this one. Let's move on to an Arena card here, which is Sheedy Snowballed, an epic minion. 3 mana 3/4 after an enemy is frozen, deal 3 damage to it. We're still probably yet to see all of the freeze synergy that they're going to give to Shaman, so we will have to see, you know, if there's any like common or rare freeze spells that are going to make this really worth it. Right now, it's not really worth it. I mean, it's a 3 mana 3/4, so, you know, it's good just for that. You'll definitely pick it for that reason, but probably most likely going to be a card that you just don't expect too much from the synergy of. And if you do get it, it'll be amazing and potentially game winning, but most of the time, you know, just a 3 mana 3/4, which is solid. Moving on next to Paladin. So Paladin, I believe we talked about all of these cards, including this Abomination. The one that we have not talked about is a 3 mana legendary, Side in the Scarlet. 2/2 rush. Whenever this minion gains attack or health, double that amount wherever this is. So even if you are going to hand or deck buff this, you know, if you were to give a +1/+1 buff to your hand, for example, playing in an Alliance Bannerman or something, this thing goes straight to being a 4/4 rush, which is already amazing. 2/2 rush obviously is not good enough. So the power of this card would very much depend on how many Bannermans and other kind of things you draft. Obviously, you can play this on a later turn and buff it on the turn you play it as well. So, you know, imagine on 7 mana, this with Blessing Kings gives you an 11/11 rush. It's pretty good, right? Compared to most combo-y cards, especially with the cards we've seen in Paladin lately, probably pretty likely you can pull this off. Again, you're not going to see this too much because it's a legendary, but yeah, pretty fair chance you'll be able to get some kind of value out of this. Just in general, having a cheap rush is good in Paladin because you can, you know, activate buffs on it, and you very much want to activate buffs on this too. So overall, going to be pretty solid, but of course, you do need to have the right synergies to make this work. And if you do get it to stick too, you can just keep buffing it potentially and then just snowball like crazy off of a single card. But the next one here is, I believe, the only Warlock card we haven't talked about is Sacrificial Summoner. This is a 3-mana 3/3 epic battle cry. Destroy a friendly minion. Summon a minion from your deck that costs 1 more. So this is basically some weird kind of evolve. So compared to evolve will give you just a totally random minion that costs 1 more, where this you actually get to know. And, you know, this is a buff to people that use a deck tracker because you want to know what's in your deck, so to know exactly what the odds are. Generally speaking, because of that, like, just there are battle cry minions that you might have that are understated in your deck, so you may not exactly want to use this 100% of the time just because you can. Compared to Evolve does not trigger a death rattle, where this, because it's a transform, but this does, so that is a significant difference as well. So overall, I want to say that this is about as good as a Evolve is. A 3-mana 3/3 that casts Evolve is, you know, probably a pretty good card, right? It's just a little bit conditional again. But this is in Warlock, and Warlock can generally afford to have some conditional stuff, you know, and you can potentially, I mean, if you just have, like, you might know that your 6-drops are really good. You might have like a Cairn or a Scribe or some Skystalk or something like that in your deck. And then you just know that if you can ever hit this on a 5-drop, then it would be really good, right? This is a card that really gives you a lot of the control, I think, so I really like it for that reason. So I feel like this is a card I'm going to be valuing pretty highly, but it is going to depend on exactly what's in your deck. It seems like a very high skill card, honestly, so I like it a lot. With that, let's move on to, actually, there are no more Druid cards. We've talked about all of these. So that would move on to the neutrals. And the neutrals, I believe there are just 2 that are announced on this list here. First one is Popsy Cooler, which was announced by Aveline, I believe. 3-mana 3/3 Death Rattle. Freeze 2 random enemy minions. Cards that have freeze on them in Arena have typically been pretty good, you know, even stuff like Glacial Shard and the 3-mana 4/3. But this one has it on Death Rattle, which makes it a bit different. Giving up a stat nowadays is pretty painful, honestly. So I don't know that it's even worth. Sometimes if you're playing a slower deck too, maybe this is worth it because you can just slow down the game in general. And honestly, potentially you can use this as well in aggro. You can just kind of throw this out there on like turn 7 or something, and then if your opponent, you know, whatever they try to respond with, you just trade this off into something, and then you freeze the remainder of their board, and then they just can't kill your other stuff. That'd probably be the best way to use this card. Honestly, just for that, using it like that, this, I guess, I would say also is a very high skill card. I like it from that perspective. It'll probably be pretty useful for that reason. It's probably, honestly, like, you wouldn't exactly, I think you just wouldn't want to see this as a curve card. I think you want to use this as a tech card basically later in the game to use it for that kind of purpose. So, but you could play it as a curve card in a especially in a slower deck, to just throw it down and slow the game. But the best use of it, I think, will be as a mid game play in a more aggressive deck. I think it'd be pretty good for that, so I like it a lot, actually. I think it's a solid card. It does too much to be bad, basically. And I was gonna mention, oh, it's a mech, so you can discover it with, oh yeah, right, never. Deep Run, no, never mind. And the last card we have is Frozen Mammoth. So you may be wondering how I got here. An excellent flavor in this card. This is a 4-mana 6/7, which is frozen until you cast a fire spell. So the thing with this is that it's obviously a lot of stats. You compare it to something like Package Runner, which is also overstat but has a very hard condition to track. I did look over all of the, I forget, is this on this tab? I think it is, yeah. I looked through like all the fire spells. Really the only class that has consistently a lot of fire spells is Mage. There are a lot of Mage fire spells. Shaman has a couple, Warlock has a couple. Outside of that, there's really nothing. So particularly in Mage, this is probably just a really, really good card because you're actually going to expect to have fire spells. Even if you don't draft them, you'll probably discover them, right? So extremely, extremely good. But also you can do other things to this. You can give it taunt, you can silence it, right? And if you were to play this with like the 4 mana 3/4 silence, for example, 4 mana for a 6/7 immediately, and then a 3/4 the next turn, that's so, you're getting so many stats off of this that's totally going to be worth it from a raw tempo perspective. So honestly, I'm tempted to say, like, in Mage in particular, this is probably, dare I say it, a premium card. In other classes, it's going to be a lot more hit or miss and synergy based. It's going to depend on exactly, you know, what kind of cards you happen to get. If you can get some synergy cards for it, though, definitely gonna be pretty reasonable. But overall, mostly gonna be Mage that you want this in, and you're probably mostly not going to want in other classes, but definitely don't shy away from thinking about this, because if you have the activators for it, it's pretty amazing. All right, that is it. Hopefully I didn't miss any, but that is our review for the next 22 cards that they've announced. I'm looking at my clock and I'm at 46 minutes right now, so and now I get to edit this and then edit another run right after this. So if you like these kind of videos, make sure to like the video, hit the comment on your favorite part of it, and subscribe if you want to see more of this kind of stuff. And yeah, but that's about it. Thanks a lot for hanging out, everyone. We will see you guys in the next one. I'm probably going to do one more review before the mass dump, by the way, and then I'll do a final really long review of the remaining cards that have been dumped, or maybe split those into neutrals and non-neutrals. So maybe there'll be, like, this is the third video, there's going to be then 5 or 6 total, most likely. As I said, thanks a lot again. We'll see you guys in the next one.